and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you. Let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also, keep in mind that if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up on our tour, there are going to be lots of cool aha moments in the MegaCast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will automatically get added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes we will be giving away throughout the MegaCast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. You do need to be in attendance here live at the webinar in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the MegaCast today. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, hey, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click into the Handouts section, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember here today is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's MegaCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all the questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about winning, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the MegaCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content right away after we wrap, you want to jump right in, make sure that you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and to grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in that Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected after we wrap today. Now, both you and your coworker, your friend, could win a prize, and we actually hold those drawings every month. So be sure you refer somebody awesome before you head out today. It could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab and fill out the application. Then the Actual Tech crew will match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys or test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you will learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, how to prevent and recover. The site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. So go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free, super easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get rolling. All right, well, I hope that you are all ready and excited for the day, because we are here at the Technology and Security Innovation Showcase. How cool is that? We get all the fun of touring a showcase floor, all of the info and the excitement without having to stand on cold cement floors at the center of an exhibition hall, trying to shout over the sounds of 3,000 other people. So none of the hassle, all of the learning. It is the best kind of showcase, really. And while you sit in the comfort of your own home or office, or stand if you're like me and you've got your standing desk going, we have two awesome teams that have sent their top experts right here to you. You can even keep your slippers on. You can cuddle your dog, whatever makes you happy, while you're learning all these exciting new things from the folks at Rubrik and Tanium. This is going to be such a great day. I can't wait to get started. So let's get things rolling here. Now, I want to start out by reintroducing myself. If I haven't met you already, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. My fellow moderators, Scott Becker and Keith Ward, will be here with us on live chat today. All right, now let's get to the good stuff, because I know you're all excited and waiting to hear about those prizes. So for you today on the MegaCast, we have some great prizes. You could win one of 3 Microsoft Surface Pro 9s, as well as a $300 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away every 30 minutes. So stay tuned for those prizes. Now, I do want to remind you that you do need to be here live and present at the showcase here with us at the MegaCast today in order to win. And if you're wondering about the full terms and conditions and whether or not you meet those, we've got them linked for you in that handouts tab, as I mentioned earlier. So head on over and check that out if you want to read all the way through those. All right, team. Well, that's it. That was all the housekeeping we had to get through today. That was short and sweet. We are ready to get into our sessions today. So I am very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, because really, who better to talk to us about innovation than the one and only Ned in the Cloud? Ned Bellavance, Pluralsight author and MVP, is here with us today to talk about vendor lock-in and maybe why you should be a little bit less worried than you think. All right, well, with that, I will hand it on over to you. Take it away, Ned.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. I'm Ned Bellavance, nedinthecloud.com, and today I wanted to talk to you about the concept of vendor lock-in. As you're considering different solutions for your organization, you may have heard the term vendor lock-in thrown around, usually as a negative. But is it really? Today, I wanted to talk about why vendor lock-in doesn't matter. First, we have to start with the definition, right? We can't talk about vendor lock-in unless we define it. So vendor lock-in is the idea that once you've chosen a vendor for a particular product or service, you are stuck with that vendor. You can't switch to another vendor without incurring significant costs. Now, those costs could be financial, but they could also be in terms of time and effort. Usually, the source of the lock-in is the proprietary nature of the product or service. Now, part of that is data-driven. Once you've loaded your data into their proprietary system and organized it using their data structures, it can be extremely challenging to migrate that data onto a different system. Another facet of lock-in is process and operations. The product or service will have specific ways of accomplishing a goal, and your organization will inevitably build processes and institutional knowledge that accommodates the product. Moving to a different vendor, even when the data structures are the same, means changing processes and retraining staff. That's not nothing. And of course, there is the financial aspect. If you've invested a significant amount of money into a product or a service, you're going to be hesitant to throw that investment away and start over with a different vendor. It's the sunk cost fallacy. And vendors know that they can raise the prices of their solutions over time if the pain of moving is greater than the pain of staying. Not all vendors, but certainly some vendors. Let's use a real-world example. Let's say you're a company that selected VMware as their virtualization platform of choice. You're using vSphere, you're using vSAN, NSX, and vRealize to manage your virtualization environment. You've invested a lot of time and money into building out your VMware environment, and you've trained your staff on how to use the VMware tools. You've built processes around those tools, and you've integrated them into your automation pipelines. You're pretty much all in on VMware. So what happens when you want to leave? Now, migrating the virtual machines themselves is no small feat, but you can do it. Retraining your staff and replacing your existing operations and process is a whole other consideration, and I'd argue the much larger challenge. So, should you strive to avoid vendor lock-in? What does that mean? What are the alternatives? The panacea for avoiding vendor lock-in seems to be open source software. After all, the software is open source and freely available for all to use. You can download the source code, compile it yourself, and run it on your own hardware. You can even make changes to the code and submit those changes back to the community. It's the ultimate in freedom and flexibility. No vendor lock-in here. Except that's not really true. Open source software can still have lock-in. It's just a different kind of lock-in. Let's take a look at the example of Kubernetes. Let's say you're running a full open source Kubernetes environment. You've got a cluster running on bare metal servers with an open source operating system. You're using open source tools like Helm and Kustomize to deploy your applications. You're using Prometheus and Grafana to monitor your cluster. There is nary a vendor in sight. Well, you might not have a single vendor bill to pay, and you can always migrate to another Kubernetes distribution, another operating system, or another deployment tool, but you're still locked in. You've built processes around the open source tools you're using. You've trained your staff on how to use those tools. You've integrated those tools into your automation pipelines. You're pretty much all in on Kubernetes. That sounds suspiciously like the VMware example, doesn't it? You've avoided vendor lock-in, but you haven't avoided lock-in. It's just a different form of the same problem. And that problem comes down to making choices in technology. Every time you make a choice in technology, you're making a trade-off. You are trading the flexibility to change vendors for the benefits of a particular solution. You are trading the ability to easily migrate between solutions for the ability to use the special features of the solution you've chosen. Whether the solution comes from a vendor or is open source, you are making a choice, and that choice will have consequences. Going with a particular vendor exhibits a certain element of risk. You are trusting that the vendor will continue to provide the service you've come to rely on, that they will continue to innovate and provide new features and functionality. They'll continue to support the product or service you've chosen and continue to stay in business. Maybe that's an unacceptable risk and you'd rather pursue an open source project. But that comes with its own elements of risk. Who are the maintainers of the project? Are you going to be able to dedicate staff to maintaining the version of the project that meets your needs? What if those people leave? Are you going to be able to find someone who can support your customized version of the project? What if the open source project is abandoned? Are you going to be able to find a suitable alternative or keep the project alive internally? Open source, non-vendored solutions have their own inherent risks. Ultimately, vendor lock-in doesn't matter because the concept of lock-in is an illusion. You can always move to a different platform. It's just a matter of how much time, effort, and money you're willing to spend to make that move. If the current solution is bad enough or a new solution provides sufficient benefits, you can move to any platform you want. It's a matter of evaluating the costs and benefits of the move. Speaking of costs, the largest cost in the long term is your people. The people who have to learn how to use the technology, who have to build processes around the technology, who have to maintain that technology. When you consider the salaries of all of those people, suddenly the licensing cost of a vendor technology doesn't seem so important. Vendor lock-in is a concept that is often thrown around, and like I said, it's framed as a negative. But the reality is that lock-in itself is an illusion and isn't particularly helpful in deciding which technology to use. Instead, you should be evaluating the costs and benefits of a particular solution, assessing the inherent risk, and making a decision based on that criteria. Whether it's a vendored solution, pure open source, or something in between, you are going to have to make a choice, and that choice will have consequences. The alternative is making no decision, and that in itself is a decision too. At least those are my thoughts on vendor lock-in. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I can be found over on LinkedIn. Thanks everyone for your time today, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Well, thank you, Ned. I think that we will. And that was a great way to start out the conversation here today. I saw Colin said, that's a spicy take. I kind of agree, Colin. I like it. We're starting out with a good conversation here. And we're just going to keep it rolling. But before we get into our first session, I have a question for all of you. And what I'm wondering about is your time frame. What is your current time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? So today we're here on the showcase floor. We are talking about all kinds of cool innovations and security strategies. This is going to be a very, very interesting conversation. So there's a lot here. So you might not have a set timeline. You might not know if you're thinking 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year. And that's fine. That's fine. All we're trying to do is get an idea of where you're kind of at, so that we can make sure we keep hitting you with the right information at the right time. So let us know what you're thinking for your time frame. Last chance to click on that poll there. That's your warm-up round, because we've got a few other polls for you throughout the day today. All right, everyone's awake and alive. I love it. Let's keep things moving. All right, so I am very excited to introduce you all to our first expert presenter today. And as you can all see from the screen, we are definitely starting out on a great note with the Rubrik crew. So up first, we will be chatting with Brandon Allman, sales engineer at Rubrik. Brandon, thank you so much for being here with us today to kick off our MegaCast. I know you have some awesome content lined up for us today, and we want to leave some time for Q&A. So with that, I'll step back and hand things on over to you. Take it away, Brandon.
Great, I appreciate it. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I had a little audio trouble to start out, so everything should be back to normal. So what we're going to be talking about today is backup does not equal cyber resilience. This is kind of a new paradigm in what we're dealing with in our cyber realm. And so I'm going to cover pretty broadly what kind of backups look like and how they impact your environment. So let's just kick it right off with my content slide. So really the question we're asking our customers is, can you recover from a cyber attack within 24 hours? This is a very important question because largely if it's beyond 24 hours, you start to get into those things where the news starts to notice, your customers start to notice, lots of things start to happen. The financial impact starts to become pretty extreme. In-day recoveries, you can usually keep a lot of that business from being too impactful, but after 24 hours, it starts to get pretty extreme. So when you look at the ecosystem of what you have in your data center, you've got all of these things. So you've got your perimeter, your network, your endpoints, all of these things, but the backup is really a last piece. And backup and DR are historically something that has been there to recover from lost files, somebody's deleted something, we've got corrupt, small pieces, but in a cybersecurity event, it's a completely different scenario. Most likely all of these pieces are going to be compromised, your perimeter down through your apps and data, and your last resort is going to be that backup. So can you recover in 24 hours with Rubrik? The answer is yes, and we're going to describe the difference between how we bring that timeline down to that 24-hour mark. We start that out by doing consolidation of your backup silos, and this reduces risk. Largely what we're dealing with is a transition to that hybrid model. We're talking cloud today, we're talking endpoints today. We have things across multiple workloads and we need to really manage those centrally. And so We'll start out with that kind of basic, what we're all dealing with, that physical stack that lives in your data center, the VMs, the databases, things that are your traditional data centers. But we're adding on a lot more things here. So now we have a large workload, so NAS pieces that can get up into the petabyte scale that don't traditionally make sense using a standard backup. So they wind up getting pushed to the cloud or pushing to different locations. So we're starting to see how we could easily silo our data protection, our cybersecurity recovery methodology by already having 2 silos. But now, and COVID really pushed this forward, that transition to 365 to those SaaS offerings, those cloud pieces that are managed. So now we've got 3 silos, and then to add it all off, those cloud traditional things, cloud native workloads, things that were running in the cloud. And most of our customers are dealing with all of these. And the legacy backups were keeping these into individual silos. Well, with the Rubrik product, we have introduced the Rubrik Security Cloud. It is truly a single interface management console. It's not going to pop out a separate HTML5 that actually is going to a different management. This type of consolidation reduces management overhead by up to 90%. And it's a big deal when you're talking about operational efficiencies, but also in reducing that risk from a cyber attack, because a lot of what you deal with in these instances is that disparate nature of all of the pieces that you're protecting. And since they're not all the same, those are when the mistakes are made, and that's how the bad actors are able to exploit your infrastructure. So by consolidating everything into a single management interface, which includes cloud workloads, it includes those on-prem, we're able to provide those efficiencies, which gives you things like role-based access control in a central location, MFA in a central location. I'm not having to secure down multiple instances of a product or multiple components of a product with different controls. I can do it all in a central nature. And so how do we do it here at Rubrik? We start out with that single pane of glass, all of that MFA, and then we layer that on to give you that cyber resilience, which is beyond just backup. And so we're going to start with a Rubrik Data Vault. On-prem, we're going to have you an isolated, immutable copy of your data. Now, why do we do an on-prem? I know there's a lot of transition to cloud. We start with the on-prem because of the need to ensure that we have a quick recoverable copy. When we're talking about multi-terabytes of scale and needing to recover those all in a single day, the ability to recover those from cloud isn't always capable when we're talking about these large scales. So having a true immutable copy on-prem next to your infrastructure, we're going to provide those RPO and RTOs that are required for your business to recover. The next thing we do is we add on things like the ability to send copies out to other sources. So we keep that operational copy local, and now we can stream out copies to multiple clouds. We can send it to a cloud that you manage. Some of the mechanisms we're dealing with is what kind of cloud. We can use object store. That includes things like our cloud copies. So if you look across the stack, we can directly send the Rubrik Data Vault copies out to clouds. We can actually send our NAS directly to cloud. But we're also able to leverage things in O365 and SharePoint and move them to other cloud infrastructures that are managed by Rubrik. So we're defeating some of those problems with tenant takeovers and that shared responsibility model with Microsoft to ensure that your data is protected properly. And then finally, some of the new modern workloads like ECS, RDS, those cloud VMs that are a little bit more difficult to protect, we're doing those differently. We're actually leveraging a streaming backup. We're not spinning up the traditional versions of our software that require compute. We're actually just streaming them directly to an object store, which increases efficiencies and also gives you the ability to manage that cost profile a lot better because you're not dealing with that compute and RAM. On top of that, we improve the performance of the traditional backups that are part of the native hyperscalers by giving you the ability to move across tenants and across accounts. So as your footprint grows in those cloud infrastructures, you're able to leverage them, and the Rubrik just becomes more important of a product line in that cloud infrastructure. So we'll have questions at the end. Normally, I would stop here and talk about how this matters in your infrastructure, but we'll save all of our questions for the end. But this is how Rubrik takes that traditional legacy backup, consolidates it into one product, and makes it flexible so that you're managing your data and not having disparate clouds and disparate locations. We're centralizing all of that control for your data protection. So let's start with the core of our product. We start out with the Rubrik Data Vault. You may already have some of this infrastructure in place that looks similar, but the differentiator here is how we put that together. So our product is a physical appliance. It's a converged backup, dedupe, storage, and vault all in one. It's separate from your VMware infrastructure so that there's no issue with your VMware going down and us not being able to do recoveries. So that's incredibly important that it's separate from your VM infrastructure. So like I mentioned, we're physically isolated, so we're survivable from that attack. So there's nothing in the hypervisor that we're going to have to deal with. So one of the traditional problems we're dealing with now is the transition from the guest attacks into the VMware attacks. They're actually starting to penetrate the hypervisors and do their damage there. And if you're leveraging the hypervisor for some of your data protection infrastructure, proxies, or software running on a VM, you're probably going to have to do recoveries of that catalog, of that VM, before you even do recoveries of your data. And that could add on hours, if not days, to your recovery process because you have to build out your recovery infrastructure before you can start to recover. We are built on a hardened Linux repository, which means no Windows. Almost 100% of the time, if your environment is compromised, everything that's Windows is compromised. What that means is no downtime. That hardened Linux kernel is a customized kernel so that you are ensuring that you're able to recover. So we're separate from your infrastructure with all that MFA, that role-based access, and the isolation from your VMware infrastructure, your Hyper-V infrastructure, whatever hypervisor you're using. We will be separate, and so we'll ensure that that recovery infrastructure is up and running the minute you need it. So we're also a scale-out architecture. We're not that traditional small head add-on storage, which can be problematic when you get to large scales. We have multiple node architecture, so which means as you grow, your capabilities grow with you. That means the bigger your infrastructure gets, the more streams you can do, the more backups you can do. It also is masterless. We're node-based, so that's rolling upgrades. That's no impact during upgrades, so no downtime to do upgrades. You're only as strong as your last upgrade when we're dealing with these infrastructures that have constant security patches. So we're very, very powerful in that terms. Everything we do is encrypted by default. It's not something you can turn off in our infrastructure. And that's a pretty powerful thing. A lot of the products out there do have encryption, but they are something that can be turned on and off. If you can turn it off, bad actors can probably turn it off as well. So we've decided that things like MFA and encryption are just on by default. Can't turn them off. That ensures that if your infrastructure is compromised, that we're still able to give you that recovery capabilities. We are air-gapped, so our OS shell storage is not accessible from the network. So there's no NFS, there's no SMB. We use a data broker movement, so you can't even see the file system if you have full admin rights to the operating system. And that's pretty important. One of the number one ways that infrastructure is attacked is the backups are attacked first, and they're looking for those traditional protocols, and they're looking to exploit those maybe through a 0-day or an unpatched vulnerability. And then once those backups are compromised, they hit your production infrastructure. So that air gap on our first copy not only ensures your backups are recoverable right next to your infrastructure, but it reduces your cost of ownership because you don't have to have 3-4 copies of your data to ensure a cyber recovery. As I mentioned before, we are immutable. We are 100% of backups cannot be modified or encrypted, and this is largely due to that hardened Linux that's custom. We are an append-only file system, so we do not allow modifications of existing backups. So that's pretty powerful in terms of ensuring that the data is going to be exactly what it's supposed to be when you recover. You can't even get in and encrypt our data in our box. It's already encrypted, and that feature, since it's append-only, will not allow you to do a double encryption event. We are secured by default. We follow that zero trust model. So we have mandatory MFA. We have local users with time-based one-time passwords where you, for your break glass issue where you need to get into the Rubrik and shut everything down, you can scan a QR code. It brings up that one-time security. And then retention lock with NTP protection. So there is an attack out there where NTP can be poisoned. We follow a monotonic clock so that we are ensuring that everything that we do is assuming a breach and that we don't trust anybody but ourselves. And that allows us to make sure your backups are completely capable to be recovered. And then really that's all of the things we've talked about is really about data protection in the kind of classic sense from a recovery perspective. We do it a little bit better. We ensure they're there. This is the cyber resiliency. But now the next generation is how do I find out how to do those recoveries? So we do have built-in scanners. They're on the box. It's not a third party. It's not something you have to add on. These built-in scanners ensure that your first copy is scanned, and then as we scale out that box, we scale out performance. This drastically reduces your RPO and RTO because we can tell you exactly where the penetration were and where the recovery points are. So when you're looking at the blast radius, you can come to Rubrik, especially when your primary infrastructure may not be accessible. You may have endpoint monitors, you may have some things that are all incredibly important, but if you're going through a significant breach, they may not be available. The fact that we're going to provide some of that infrastructure capability built into our product, including the scanners, is going to give you a power that's going to reduce that RPO and RTO significantly based on some of the historical capabilities that we would have to do, the recover the VM, to scan it. Is it good or bad? Oh, it's not. I have to go back in time. So we're going to do all that on box. You don't have to inflate the copy. You don't have to undedupe it or anything like that. It's built into the Data Vault architecture. So this is going to ensure you have those recoveries. So that is our architecture. That's that Data Vault cluster. So when you have the bad day, we're going to recover in hours, not days. So how do we do it? So we do it with that air gap. We do it by locking the file system. 100% recoverable RTO in less than 24 hours. So that's pretty powerful. So why the backup isn't cyber resilience? And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I know that there's I'm saying a lot, but I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A. And so what we see, this is the anatomy of an attack. This is how we've deconstructed what's going on. So they get access to your data. Mandiant's recent publication is saying they're in dwell time about 5 days. It's reduced from about 200. This has a lot to do with how we're better at our tooling and everybody's better at scanning. So they have to be a little bit faster on their attack. But maybe they're not just looking to encrypt. Maybe they're looking for data exfiltration. So knowing what your data looks like and what your personally identifiable information looks like is more important than ever. So they're not just encrypting data and sending you a Bitcoin address to send them money. They're actually going to say, hey, we stole a bunch of credit cards with social security numbers, and if you don't pay us money, we're going to send it off to the dark web. And then, of course, you have to pay AG fees and things like that. And so that is part of the problem. And so in most attacks, once they trigger it off, they've been in there 5 days, they've stolen a bunch of your important data. They'll do a VM level attack, which means not the guest at the VM within the hypervisor. And usually within 5 hours, 60% of your infrastructure is encrypted. So these happen fast. And a lot of times before you know it, you're 60% done and you're in a bad way. And so everything's down. So the clock matters. So those ability to recover quickly is incredibly important. So your business cost is increasing because they're getting in there, they're encrypting quickly. So you need to know what, when, where, and how they are impacting your environment. So that's where Rubrik comes to the rescue. So we ask these questions. Is your infrastructure 100% immutable? We are at Rubrik. That's important to ask. How do you know what was encrypted if you don't have your production infrastructure up and running? So if I can't look at anything and my VMware host is down, I don't know what is and what isn't. So the ability to look in the Rubrik product and see that is pretty important. What was stolen? So that's the sensitive data. On the first pass, what was at risk? We can provide information on what they had access to so that you know what your risk level in that blast radius is. And then when to recover to. What time in the past do I need to use for my recover point? If my infrastructure is completely down and my backups are compromised, or they've encrypted my backups, or I have to rebuild my catalog, that might take hours. We're going to give you that in minutes with that scanning tool that's built in. And then how long will it take? That goes partly to that recovering your backup infrastructure. If you have to recover your catalog, recover your backup VMs before you can actually start recovering your data, that may double or triple the time to get your recoveries up and running. So that's largely why backup is not equal to cyber resiliency. We do all of this, and this is what we consider cyber resiliency. So you have to ask yourself, you may have a piece of this, you may have some immutability, but is it truly immutable? You may be able to do some sensitive data exfiltration, but maybe it's only 40% of your infrastructure because the product you're using is incredibly expensive, so we only do it for our mission critical data. How would we do a clean room recovery? And then do we know how far back in time with the tools we have we could go? And we can all do that with our Rubrik cyber resiliency. This is done through the data vault, 100% immutable. This is a little bit of a review, but our first product is immutable, physically isolated, built-in scanners, and it's scale out. We have a dual machine learning model that can scan for encryption. We do that on the first copy and alerts within 15 minutes of getting that copy. We also integrate, because we are doing that first copy and we're API driven, you can integrate that into your own management tools. We have a sensitive data discovery tool that is looking for that PII data on that first scan as well. It is a policy-based product that we have canned products, so you don't have to create your own, but we have the ability to extend those if you need to. So if you need to extend those, we can do that as well. We also move beyond just looking at what's encrypted and what data was possibly exfiltrated, but we can do an IOC scan. So we can live scan deep into your infrastructure and quarantine things that have been left behind to do malicious damage. So that ensures that not only is your data recoverable, but that you're not reinfected or you can't reintroduce threats in the future. Something like 60 or 70% of our customers that have had an attack that did not do mitigation in their past or did not have the ability to scan for threats within their infrastructure get hit again within 6 months. So having the ability to take indicators of compromise from your infrastructure vendors and put them into our tool and make sure that you know all of the possible attack points that they've left behind and quarantine those so they're not recovered through your backups, very powerful. And so all of this is great, but we add on one more layer, which is the ability to do this through an automated workflow. So we've got that bunker. We can tell you what's been stolen. We can tell you where the recover points are. We can tell you what's been left behind. Now we can actually put all of that together. We can decide which VMs and which order to recover and provide an automated workflow for that. So we can provide runbook type recoveries with postscripts so that it's one button recoveries, so that your recoveries, once you've made all of these determinations on which VM to recover and what point in time we want to go to, that we can do that automated so that it happens in an orderly fashion. All of this on top of that central UI with the automated efficiencies is a pretty powerful tool for you to make sure those recoveries are successful in your infrastructure. I think I'm running a little ahead of time here, so hopefully we have a good time check. The last thing I'm going to cover beyond that is what we do as a company that is beyond just providing a great product, providing that vault, providing that recover capability. Part of every customer that we have, and we think this is important, is a ransomware response team. Most of the time, once you go through a ransomware, it's the first time. It can be incredibly daunting to deal with all of the impacts. You walk in, you've got this black screen with the Bitcoin address, or you get an email, your management tool. It's the middle of the night. It's probably a Friday night or a Saturday morning, and you need to get your ducks in a row. And sometimes it can be incredibly overwhelming. Part of the Rubrik product is access to the ransomware response team. It doesn't matter what level of the product you purchase. If it's just M365, if it's the on-prem, if it's the cloud native, you'll have access to this team. Immediately after making a call into our support line, you'll get access to this team, and they will jump on the call and start doing all of the best practice recommendations, essentially a consulting service for you to ensure that your backups are recoverable in the best way possible. You're going to have those immutable copies, but we want to get in there and make sure that they're not adding anything in the infrastructure that could effectively cause problems. So things like stopping current backups to make sure they're not introducing additional data into your thing. Part of that append-only file system allows us to sometimes go back in time even further than your policies identify. So lots of nice things that this team brings to the table. They are 24/7, 365, and they have been doing this for a good amount of time. So we've had hundreds of customers leverage this team in helping them recover. The added value of this is we get closer representation with our customers, but we learn from these events. So every time we have a ransomware response team engagement, they understand a little bit better about what's going on in the infrastructure, in the ecosystem. They know the tactics. They learn more about the tactics. That allows us to improve our tools. So we get better at that ransomware investigations. We get better at that sensitive data discover. We get better at that workflow migration where we allow that workflow because we're in the trenches with you doing the recoveries real time with our customers, which is an incredible value add for our customers, but for us as well. It allows us to understand the infrastructure and the ecosystem that the bad actors are using, and that's pretty important. So I think I might be 5 minutes ahead, but that's all I have here today. So any questions? I think we have some questions. So I'll hand it back to the team.
Thank you so much. We do have some great questions coming in. We're actually right up against time, but we're going to sneak in a question. It's so funny how fast
5 minutes over then.
things fly by, honestly, and there's obviously so much to cover. Before we jump into questions, I do want to say we've got a poll up on the screen for you all, and what we'd love to know is what additional information you would like to get about the Rubrik solution. As we just said, lots to cover here and a lot we didn't get to, so make sure that you click on this poll, let Rubrik know how they can follow up with you, and make sure you get that information you're looking for. While you're doing that, Brandon, I'm going to try to consolidate a few questions, and there's going to be a lot that we won't get to, but there was a few questions kind of clarifying. You mentioned some of the customization. You said there's, in terms of dealing with sensitive data, there's a lot that just comes ready to go, but that there's options for people to kind of make it fit what they need. And there was a few people that were asking about, privacy and making sure that only the right people are seeing data and access, and then also compliance issues, either industry or country to country. I'm just wondering if you can kind of speak to some of the customization that might help with some of those concerns.
Sure. So we're scanning your data on the Rubrik data vault, so nothing leaves the data vault, and then we're providing you reports on what we're seeing. So if you're searching for social security numbers, we'll show you where those numbers are and what accounts have access to them, so you can see if it's all users, if it's an admin account, and that allows you a visibility to ensure that those are locked down properly. That's the number one thing we get with that tool, and it is a temporal in nature tool, so it is over time, so it helps you find those points before something happens. And then if you do have a breach, you can go find that point in time and look over your whole infrastructure and identify if you had any risk levels. So we are looking at whatever you define is important to you. We can do regular expressions, we can do dictionary looks. So pretty nice, powerful tool there to give you that visibility. And it's across everything we back up. So all of the on-prem stuff, we can do it with SharePoint, which is a little bit more expansive than some of those tools out there. And it's a lot more cost effective because we're doing it on the backup infrastructure.
Amazing. Well, Brandon, like I said, I wish we could keep going. We are going to have to leave it there. If you have a little time on live chat, there are some questions here for you. And either way, for everyone out there, so that you know, if we don't get back to you either in the live sessions today or over live chat, you will get responses back over email. We're going to make sure that the teams here with us get all the questions you asked, so you'll get some answers. So please do keep those questions coming in. Brandon, before you leave us, if somebody wants to get excited, they're already excited. If somebody wants to get started with Rubrik and kind of get this conversation going, what do you recommend is that first step?
Just go to Rubrik.com. It should have a pop-up that'll ask you if you need more help, or if you have partners in your area that you work with. We are a partner first company, so find your partner, ask them about us, and they'll get your rep on the call.
Awesome. All right. Well, Brandon, I want to thank you again for being here with us today. You got a lot of high fives from the audience. I know you really resonated with all of them, so we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
And for anyone out there that is looking to get a little bit more information right away, please do make sure that you head on over to the handouts tab and grab the Rubrik slide deck. So everything that we just kind of walked through with Brandon, there's some great, and I know, and a few people mentioned like it's a lot of text and it's very small. So if you're having trouble reading that text, the whole slide deck is there waiting for you in that handouts tab. So make sure you get that. Lots of great information. While you're downloading that handout, while you are clicking on the poll, I am going to give away our very first prize of the day. So we have a $300 Amazon gift card, and we have a Microsoft Surface Pro 9. So very first winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Walter Makovas. Sorry, Walter, I'm struggling with that one. Walter Merkovas of California, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. And then our Microsoft Surface Pro 9 going to Jasper Llewellyn of Arkansas. Jasper Llewellyn of Arkansas, you have won a Microsoft Surface Pro 9. Now, to both our winners, we will be following up with you after we wrap, so stay tuned for that. Also, keep in mind, we will be following up with the best question winners from each one of our sessions. And I'll remind you that even if we don't get to your question live in a Q&A, today, that's fine. You're still entered to win just by asking that question. We review all of them after we wrap up our sessions here today. So keep those questions coming in. All right, that was a lot of information all at once, and I think it's time we keep on rolling so here's the thing. I mentioned we're here in our virtual showcase together today, and here's another cool thing about it. It is short and sweet, but definitely packs a punch because, folks, here we are already at the end of our virtual walkthrough of this showcase floor. And we have come to our last booth in the showcase. And here's the exciting news. Check out where we are ending up today. I am very happy to introduce you all to our final speaker in our MegaCast today, and that is Darren Hamilton, VP, Customer Service Operations. Darren, thank you so much for being here as our grand finale on the MegaCast today, our very last expert in our virtual showcase. I know this is going to be an awesome wrap to the day. I can't wait to dive in. So, Darren, I'm going to step back and hand things on over to you. Take it away.
All right, thank you. I'm thankful myself. I'm thankful of you for inviting me, and thankful to everybody for the time and attention on this. Look, I wanted to talk not entirely about Tanium, but talk about a very specific thing that we help our customers with. And I'm going to move the slides forward a little bit here. What I like to call accelerating emerging issue response is something that a lot of our customers, if not all of our customers, engage us for as a primary use case, as a primary thing that they're concerned about that we can help them with. Today, I'm really going to talk about something that's painful for all of us and has been painful for a long time. Emerging issues disrupt our normal operations. A major vulnerability pops up in the news. Stop me if you've heard this one before. A board member calls your CIO and asks them, "Are we good?" And a mad scramble ensues. War rooms are loaded. Multiple teams and tools are engaged. The extremely labor-intensive hunt to find where this zero-day vuln might exist starts, and it may take days or even weeks to fully scope, and then the remediation work that follows can take weeks or even months to complete. All this disrupts the work you're trying to do on a daily basis. You already have a lot on your plates. Projects get delayed, people get burnt out, and Tanium can really help you address crisis response more efficiently. And what we do is enable you to know everything you need to know right now, take control immediately, and fix it fast. And these sound like really simple marketing-esque type of statements, but I'll show you, I'll demonstrate for you how we actually enable this. All of this that we do is also enabling of alignment between your security and operations teams. Teams that are typically at odds with different objectives now get together in a common platform console and a common data set for attacking these problems. So let me talk through what I mean. This is a view from the Tanium community site, which I'm responsible for. And we post our vulnerability advisories, as many security software vendors do, on this site. The difference between what we do and the industry standard is we take this process of knowing everything now, taking control, fixing it fast, and we take that process down to minutes or hours instead of days or weeks or months. And we give you certainty and we give you safety as a result. And through this process, like I said, we align teams. So I'll show you what that means. I'm going to use an older example, but one everybody knows, which is Log4j or Log4Shell. And you can see a screenshot from tanium.community.com here, which I encourage everybody to go visit. It's where we post a lot of interesting information, not just on emerging issues, but what Tanium can do and how our customers use our products. But
This particular article here is written by our Vulnerability Emergency Response Team, or VERT for short. And I'm going to demonstrate how this guidance plays out in a large-scale enterprise environment. So I'm going to take this emergency that was all over the news, and I'm going to show you how to efficiently scope it and even remediate it. But where do we start? So I'm actually going to go right into a quick demo here. Let me make sure I've got the right window. Here we go. All right, hopefully that's showing up on the screen.
We can see it. You're good.
You can see it. Great. Okay, always got to get validation. Never be sure.
Gotcha. Thumbs up.
Make sure it's good. All right, thanks. So where do we start? We start with some really basic questions, like how many computers do we have? How many of them are servers? How many of them are systems or servers that are running vulnerable services? And as simple as these questions seem, for a large organization with thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even over 1 million endpoints, those are nearly impossible questions to answer. When I talk to IT executives, just the first question, how many computers do we have, is something that most of them can't answer with any degree of certainty within plus or minus 20%, which is shocking. Never mind how many of them are actually vulnerable. So what we do is we provide certainty of data. Right now, I'm going to ask, get computer name in the Tanium console. And what I'm doing here is I'm reaching out live, and I'm collecting this question and the answers to this question from every single machine that's online right now. And we can repeat this process on an ongoing basis to collect information from machines that are offline or roaming or not connected to the internet at that point in time, or VMs that aren't spun up or containers that aren't live. But what you're seeing here is live results. And you see the results come in very quickly, within seconds. So I've touched about 1,000 machines, 1,100 machines here, and collected just the basics. What's their computer name? But I have certainty. I have 1,119 machines online right now. And I can ask more detailed questions. Let's get the computer name and the operating system from all the machines. And you'll see I reach out again and I ask for fresh data, and it happens nearly instantaneously, and I can see what operating systems I have live. And so now we have certainty of which ones are servers, which ones are Linux machines, which ones are Mac OS, which ones are running AIX or Sun OS or Solaris, and which ones are containers, and which ones are what version of Windows machines. And that can help me scope. And then I can get even more detailed. And I can ask for the running services or installed applications or running processes or whatever I want live from these machines. And you'll see the progress bar here move very quickly, and we're collecting live data. So think about this. These are running services on these machines. If I went into my CMDB, how accurately would this list be if I was capable of collecting all of the running services from these machines? Are these services up? Are they listening? All of these answers are very simple for Tanium to collect. And so we're back to this log4j example. How do I find all of the vulnerable log4j applications across all of these machines? So let's do something that is unique to Tanium, I believe, which is we're going to find all of the files on all of the machines that contain the file name .jar. Now, in a very large organization, this is going to be millions of files, literally. But what I can showcase here is how we can reach out to these machines and in a very light touch, low impact way. And if you want to read more about that, we have white papers available on our community site that will explain to you how we can find all of this file type, all the jar files. Now, the jar files in its entirety as a data set is too wide of a net. We're not going to find log4j by taking this approach, but it's illustrative of the capability that we have that allows us to interrogate the file systems of all of my machines all at once to find a thing. to find a specific file based on a wildcard or a regex or a file name. And that's really important if you're trying to hunt. If you've got a PDF that's being downloaded in a phishing attack, this is an exceptionally good tool for that purpose. Now, back to the Log4j example again. What I need to do with Log4j is not just find files of a certain type, but I actually need to find libraries, Log4j libraries that are embedded in the software applications that your DevOps organization has deployed out to all of your machines, and frankly, everybody's lost track of them. Finding supply chain vulnerabilities like Log4j, embedded library vulnerabilities at build time is hard. At runtime is nearly impossible. And so what we're doing is we're accomplishing what's thought of traditionally as the impossible. So I want to find all of the assets that I have that are connected to my network or under my scope of responsibility. And I'm going to find the software bill of materials that contains Log4j libraries across all of my machines. And here they are. So I've got a list of these Apache files or services, or I've got other bundled applications that contain Log4j libraries, and you can see the CPE information here to see specifically what they are. You can see exactly where they are within the file system. And if I click on the count here, I can see the assets, the machines that have these libraries. So what I've done here is, in the space of, if my math is right, about 13 minutes, including explaining how this is all done, scoped the Log4j vulnerabilities for my entire organization. And now I can provide this information to the system owners to go and remediate those applications, to go and update those libraries and redeploy those applications in a non-disruptive way. And I think that was pretty impressive, but we're not done. So that whole simple exercise could be delivered to you automatically in a single dashboard. And that single dashboard that Tanium provides will actually show you the entire scope of that problem and what you can do about it. So if I look in here in my library of dashboards and I look at emerging issues, so this is back to the emerging issues blog post that I was talking about. What we're doing is we're spoon feeding our customers what this vulnerability is, what the impact is, just like any vulnerability report. But down here, we're actually showing you where you've got the vulnerable systems, where you've got those systems mitigated. And it's really not obvious here unless you know where to look. There is a deploy action button here. And you can see what this action does. So this is a more recent example. I skipped over something here. This is CVE 2023-36884. This is an Office and Windows remote code execution vuln. And if I hit deploy action here, this package will actually change some registry values and mitigate this vulnerability. And I can literally do that here. I won't disrupt my environment, fix all the vulnerabilities. What I'm going to do is I'm going to schedule this, or I can schedule it recurring so that as systems come online, they get this package, they self-remediate. And our customers are leveraging this capability, which we've just recently developed in the last month to great effect. And we're getting huge kudos from our customer base. We're automating that entire war room effort of how do we find this vulnerability? How do we fix it fast? Actually, let me come back to my illustration of what we're doing. How do we give you visibility into the scope of the problem? How do we enable you to control the situation? How do we give you speed to fix it fast? To show you exactly where this vulnerability lies and what to do about it. And how do we give a single source of truth so that the system owners, the people doing vulnerability assessment, your security operations teams, your IT operations teams all have a common view. So with that said, I think I'll wrap up. I don't know how I'm doing on time, Jess, but
you're doing great.
I want to offer up my email for any questions.
Yeah.
We have try.tanium.com or community.tanium.com as available resources. I'm open to any questions that anybody has.
Darren, well, first of all, thank you so much. I do want to remind you, you're still screen sharing.
Oh, okay.
So if you want, if you want to leave that up, but yeah, there you go. There's the info before you start, scanning your emails and things with all our lovely viewers here. Thank you for that awesome demo. What a cool walkthrough. And I know we're getting a lot of questions from the audience. So I know people are really excited to jump in. I do want to, and I'm just leaving this up for another quick second because I want to give everyone a second to screenshot that or snag those links. But I'm going to move over to the poll. And what I'm going to ask all of you to do is click on the poll here and let us know what additional information you would like to get about the Tanium solution. So there's a lot of options for you there: data sheets, white papers, case studies, and so on. Let Tanium know how they can follow up with you, because obviously this is just kind of scratching the surface and there's lots more to dig into. So click on the poll there, get the information you need. While you do that, Darren and I are going to get us to some questions. Darren, you ready to dive in?
Yeah, ready. Fire away.
Awesome. I do want to start with, I saw this a few times in a few different ways, so I think it's important to address. There was a few people wondering if you could give us an idea what makes Tanium unique, what makes you stand out?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So we developed our software around 15 years ago, and we've been tuning it ever since. One thing that's unique about Tanium, it's not the technology itself, but the company, is that we started by engaging with the very largest of the large first. So some reference customers like U.S. Defense Department, like Amazon, Walmart, those were our initial customers, and some of the big American banks. And what we did is we solved for scale first. And what we did is we enabled the very simple use cases that I showed first as the core of what we do, which is being able to reach out to all of your machines and collect data from them instantaneously in real time in a non-disruptive way. And that was surprisingly hard for us to accomplish. Everything that we do is based around that concept. So when I show things like asset reports or vulnerabilities or anything that is a product on top of Tanium, or a module as we might call it, or a solution, everything is based on that fundamental platform concept of being able to reach out in real time and collect data. So it's I call it tongue in cheek, the instant gratification machine. If you want any piece of information from the operating system from all of your machines right now, you can get it. And you can get it without disrupting operations. I also call it the impatience machine, because it definitely makes you used to being able to see everything now and control it now, which is unique. Nothing else works like that. And what we've been able to do is provide an open platform to our customers who can not only take advantage of some of the capabilities we built on top of it, but we have very robust APIs where our customers can customize what they do and build out their own use cases. Whatever they need from their operating systems, they need it now, and at any scale, we can do it.
That's fantastic. Because we had two different questions wondering about integrations. So I'm assuming with that kind of an API system, it's fairly easy to work with different environments and platforms.
Yes. Robust APIs, like I said, REST APIs. GraphQL is something that we've really embraced in the last year or so, and also the ability to export data through what we call Tanium Connect, so that you can send data to your CMDB. You can integrate with your ticketing system like ServiceNow or anything of that type, your SEM, and get whatever information you need into those systems that are starving for real-time data.
Yeah, and something that's come up quite a bit today, and often when we have these types of conversations, is compliance, and that customization is really important when we are looking at compliance industry to industry, and then as we were chatting earlier about country to country. Is there anything else that you'd want people to know about that kind of compliance customization as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a vulnerability and compliance background, and
Mm,
the plethora of tools that our customers have to deal with in order to assess their compliance, assess their vulnerability state, is quite endless. And what we're doing is we are focused on mostly the endpoint, meaning the operating systems that are workstation and server and virtual and container infrastructures, not necessarily the network, although we do have extensions to assess network as well. And we are making that job much easier. So a lot of our customers will look at Tanium and say, we can do a lot with Tanium. Why don't we pile on our compliance and vulnerability assessment requirements onto that single Tanium agent
hmm
and do that work that a separate agent is normally required to do, or a separate set of network scanners, which is difficult to maintain, is required to do. And so, what that drives is tool consolidation and agent consolidation. And look, every agent that we can help our customers pull off of one of their workloads or one of their systems is probably compute, RAM, and disk I/O cycles that they can get back to do actual work. So that's a lot of what we focus on is tool consolidation, and helping our customers address those compliance use cases is key.
Mm. And implementation process is pretty easy, and there's support throughout.
Absolutely, yes. So we have a very robust partner community. If you reach out to me, I can recommend a partner. We have the arguably, we're told anyways, the best support in the industry, or at least industry leading. We really pride ourselves on being customer first and helping our customers through hard problems. That was the genesis of Tanium, was
Mm.
customers came to us with hard problems and said, it's really hard for us to find files on file systems across 200,000 machines or 2,000 machines or whatever the case may be. Can you help
hmm
us with that? And that's our approach, is listening to our customers and then solving for the hard problems, the things that are often thought of as impossible or really labor intensive. I'll add one more thing to that, which is a lot of our customers, because we're an open platform, take their use cases that are tricky, that require them to, let's say, SSH to a Linux machine, run a script, collect the data, put it in a repository, move on to the next machine. We can do that job at scale in seconds. So we look at real customer pain. Everybody that works for this company, at least in my neck of the company, comes from an IT administrator background. We've lived the pain, and we will definitely be here to help solve it.
You've been right there with them. Well, that brings up an interesting question. If you were thinking about the target user of Tanium, and I'm also curious if there's anyone that you think wouldn't benefit.
Yeah. Who wouldn't benefit? That's an interesting one. My initial reaction is network operations, but just because we don't have an agent on a network device doesn't mean we can't assist network operations. So stepping back, our typical user is somebody in security operations and somebody in IT operations, folks that are responsible for the machines that run the business.
Mm.
And there's no specific buyer in any particular company that's consistent. We could sell to a CISO, we could sell to a workstation operations director, we could sell to multiple personas, people that have real pain that we can help solve for. But that network use case is something that's always interesting to me, because I also come from a networking background, and we have customer network operations people who use Tanium to find things out about their network from the endpoint perspective that they can't find from their network tools. What machines are connected to what network ports is often a hard problem to answer, especially if you're talking about work from home and home Wi-Fi and things like that. What if you could assess all of the Wi-Fi network strength across all of your work from home people and proactively tell people where they need to fix their home Wi-Fi networks to get their work done better? That's actually a simple thing for us to accomplish, and a hard thing without Tanium to accomplish.
Well, I have to tell you, Darren, I really wish we could keep going because the questions are continuing to pour in as we go through this. So, and I would say, can you stick around on live chat? But we're going to be wrapping up soon. So what I'm going to do, Darren, is make sure that all the questions that are getting asked right now are sent to you and your team so that we can get some questions back to, or answers back to them. And you can kind of keep that conversation going. Before you leave us, though, I have to ask, for somebody that really does want to get started right away and jump in with Tanium, what do you recommend is their first step?
Oh, I'd say go to try.tanium.com. You can have a 0 commitment trial where you can bring your own machines and you can test it out and see what it can actually do. And it's surprisingly easy to get up and running and surprisingly easy to use. And I've been doing IT for a long time. I've been with this company for almost a decade and it continues to impress me, and I'm hard to impress. So go try it for yourself.
I love that. That's a fantastic vote of confidence there. And Darren, I really want to thank you for being here with us. Like I said, the questions have really been pouring in and lots of high fives from the audience. So I know that you were striking some chords out there, and I'm excited for you to continue those conversations after we wrap. Thank you very much for your time.
Happy to. Thank you.
And for everyone out there who clicked on the poll, thanks, or asked a question, again, great questions coming in. You guys everyone's had their coffee today. Everyone's alert, alive, enthusiastic. I'm really digging it. And what else could we expect at this awesome showcase? Please do keep clicking on that poll. Please keep those questions coming in. While you do that, I will also remind you to head on over to the handouts tab. Be sure that you click there and you can head over to the Tanium user community. There's some great resources. You know, this whole thing is such a great example of the power that these communities of learning, these social connections, sharing resources can all bring to all of us. So please do click on that link, open that up, and get that conversation rolling with Tanium. Make sure you've got both those handouts kind of ready before we close up here, because I promise you're going to want to look back on those once we're kind of all wrapped up. So while you're getting that downloaded, I am going to give away our very last prize of the day, and then I will read our entire prize winner list as always. So we are going to give away a $300 Amazon gift card and a Microsoft Surface Pro 9. So the $300 Amazon gift card is going to Eric Wojciechowski of Indiana. Eric Wojciechowski of Indiana. I'm sure I'm not saying that wrong, Eric. My apologies. Or I'm not saying that right. And then we have a Microsoft Surface Pro 9. I'm actually going to give away 2 of those to Mandy Schramm of Kentucky and Milton Hamilton of South Carolina. Mandy Schramm of Kentucky and Milton Hamilton of South Carolina. I'm going to read our entire winners list over again. $300 Amazon gift card going to Walter Makovitz of California. A Surface going to Jasper Llewellyn of Arkansas. A gift card going to Eric Wojciechowski of Indiana. And a Surface going to Mandy Schramm and Milton Hamilton. Mandy Schramm of Kentucky and Milton Hamilton of South Carolina. Congratulations to all of you. We will be following up with you after we win. After we wrap up our megacast today. I mean, technically, yes, we will be following up with you after you win. And then to everyone out there who asked a question, stay tuned because we will be reviewing all of the questions after we wrap, and we will follow up with the winners of that best question gift card from each one of those sessions that we had here today. All right, team. Well, that brings us to the end. Now, before we go, I do want to remind you all that if you're sitting out there and thinking that you have a story that you think you'd like to tell, you'd like to bring a virtual booth to one of our showcases here in the future, we would absolutely love that. So shoot us a message at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And Scott, Keith, myself, David, we're all here ready to talk to you on a summit, an EcoCast, a megacast, a webinar, whatever you have in mind. We've got something for you. So let us know how we can help you tell your story. Reach out and we'll get that rolling. All right. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank our speakers once again from Rubrik and from Tanium for making this megacast possible. What an exciting day that this has been, and a big thank you to all of you for taking time out of your day to come tour this virtual showcase with me today, asking some great questions. I had so much fun strolling with you all through the floors of this showroom, learning about all these exciting solutions, all from the comfort of our homes and offices. I've got my slippers on. I have my coffee here. I just learned some super fun things without having to, deal with airports. I mean, this is the best showcase ever.
I hope that you have all gotten some interesting ideas, some tips, maybe feeling a little bit more informed and equipped to think about implementing some of the opportunities for innovation that you've been dreaming about at your organization. And most of all, I hope that you just had fun with us today. Now, before you take off and head on about your days, I do want to remind you all to sign up for the EcoCast that we've got on Tuesday, August 15th. That's next week, Tuesday, on data centers versus cloud versus colo, why to consider, how to choose, and how to move. That's all the things, right? Data center, cloud, and colo, considering, choosing, and moving. So make sure that you mark your calendars for that. Register for that now. That's Tuesday, August 15th at noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. Well, I hope that I get to see all of you there. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks, team.